Okay, hear me out. 6 wickets in 3 innings, both at an average and a strike rate of 20, ending with figures of 4 for 39 in 8.4 overs versus Australia in Australia in the third ODI. And this after going wicketless in the first ODI and going at 7.3 runs to the over in the second ODI. That is quite the improvement through a series. More importantly, Harshit Rana in this series also ended up as the highest wicket taker in a side that had Mohammad Siraj and against an opposition where Mitchell Starc and Josh Hazlewood both played all 3 games in the ODI series. Of course, this wasn't a fluke and a clear show of improvement from Harshit Rana. But there's so many questions on Harshit Rana. Why is this man selected? Why is he selected in all 3 formats? Is he that good a pace bowler? And does he actually deserve any of this at all? So through this video, we'll break it down, get into the man who's currently the spotlight of all of the trolls on cricket, Harshit Rana. Now before we get into the nitty-gritties, definitely hit that subscribe button, and here's a video from our membership.
Sachin heard these whispers going about how Navjot Singh Sidhu is not going to play, so we will need another opener.
Even telling Wadekar that if he failed, he would never ask him again. For a man who up until that point was striking at 75. And that's exactly what he did. This was quite some news for the Indian team.
That's true.
Yeah.
They decided to give Rohit Sharma a go, and in the first game, returning as an opener after 2-3 years, that's close to 10,000 runs just as an opener. He said many times that he opened mostly overseas because his Tigers at home teammates turned into chickens on tour.
Team के बाहर तो कोई player नहीं बनता, which is valid. Then is dropped from the squad, comes back in 1975 after 6 years. If you look at Harshit Rana's overall career, he's played 2 test matches, 8 ODIs and 3 T20Is. Over the course of the past year, he's made his debut in each format for India, something that is very rare for a young player to do so quickly. All in all, across these games, he's picked up 25 wickets and his numbers aren't all that impressive. While he has shown that he can pick wickets, he's also someone who's been extremely expensive through each of the formats that he's played. And up until this point in his career, Harshit Rana has been looked at as someone who can come in the middle overs, someone who can hit the deck, and someone who can bowl good pace. Add to that, he also has a decent yorker, has a good bouncer, and has a good variation of pace. And from what the last 2 ODI series have shown, it seems that Harshit Rana is someone who can adapt quickly and is able to pick up things very fast. But this is all of his international career. Before we look at any of this, it's important to look back at Harshit Rana, his early days, his early career, and how he came through the ranks. Now obviously the first place, and like a lot of Indian players in the current generation, Harshit Rana was found out in the IPL. In fact, he ended up making his IPL debut before even playing for the state of Delhi. He was only around 20 years of age when, on the recommendation of Nitish Rana, he was brought into the KKR setup in place of an injured Rafiq Salam in 2022. He got a couple of games in that IPL, and it was from there in that very same year where he made his debut for Delhi in the Ranji format as well as the Vijay Hazare Trophy. He immediately made an impact because you could see that across the 5 matches that he played in that Ranji Trophy season and the 8 innings in which he bowled, he picked up 21 wickets. And you could see that there was clearly some potential about this boy because he could come in and bowl quick pace, but also for the kind of wicket-taking ability that he had. This was also on display in a very important game against Hyderabad, where Delhi were able to eventually win that game by 9 wickets on the back of an amazing performance by Harshit Rana. Not only did he record his best bowling figures of 7 for 45, but he also picked up 10 wickets in that match and also scored 58 against Hyderabad. He ends up playing 6 matches in the IPL of 2023, where he gets just 5 wickets but goes at a decent economy rate of 8.6. Clearly, the Indian think tank had already seen something in him. There was nothing crazy about Harshit Rana that stood out a lot, but you could see some really good attributes that would account for a good fast bowler. He had all of the potential, he had the pace, he had the pace changes, and on those dead Indian wickets, he was able to generate bounce. More importantly, he was someone who could hit the deck, ball at high speeds, and this is something that at the time seemed to pique the interest of the Indian think tank. This is also evident because right after the IPL of 2023, he got picked up into the Duleep Trophy squads. And Harshit Rana had a good Duleep Trophy, but not in the way you would have expected him to, because he ended up as the 4th highest run scorer in that year's tournament. In the 2 matches and across the 3 innings that he played, he averaged 95 and struck at 132. This came on the back of a highest score of 120 to not out that he got against the Northeast zone, batting at number 9. And with the ball, his returns were okay, where he got 7 wickets in the 4 innings that he bowled in. He averaged 25 and struck at 31 and had a best bowling in an innings of 3 for 84. On the back of this performance, Harshit Rana had done enough to be picked in the squad that was going to play the ACC Men's Emerging Tournament. And this was one of the first few instances of Harshit Rana opening the bowling. Usually up until this point, you would see him coming in as a first change, but here he was given the responsibility to bowl with the new ball. Now in the 5 games that he played, he picked up only 7 wickets, and that by his standards is not something that he would have been too proud proud of. But one thing was clear, that at this point in time, Harshit was better off as a middle overs bowler. The 2023 season just kept on going for him, because after the Men's Emerging Cup, he went on to play the Vijay Hazare Trophy the very same year. In the 5 matches that he did play, he picked up 10 wickets at a decent economy of 5.4, slightly on the expensive side, but what stood out once again was his average and strike rate, both of them being below 20. Now, up until this point, Harshit Rana has actually had a very decent season, and not just in the white ball format, but also in the red ball format. However, you would think that it is still fairly early for the Indian selectors to start having an eye on him. But it was clear that they were closely tracking his progress, because he got picked into the India A squad that was touring South Africa at the end of 2023. Although he did not play any games here, of course that experience would have been useful for him, and that's something to keep in mind. Eventually, through the course of that season, he capped it off beautifully by the end of IPL 2024, where he ended up as KKR's second highest wicket taker and also the fourth highest wicket taker in that year's IPL. Of course, that was also the year where KKR won, and Harshit Rana had bowled some brilliant spells right through the season. He ended up with 19 wickets in the 13 games that he played, and at an economy rate of 9. One of his best performances, however, came in the final against a swashbuckling SRH, where he picked up 2 for 24 in his 4 overs. And so up until this point, we have a decent amount of data on Harshit Rana. We've seen how he started off in each format, and from here what I'd like to do is look at what India has coming next. At this point, the next big thing was of course the home test series, but after that was the BGT in 2024 that India was going to play in Australia. And also keep in mind that this is around the same time where Gautam Gambhir was appointed the coach of the Indian side. Now keep in mind that it would have been next to impossible for Harshit Rana to break into the test squad, at least for test matches at home. And realistically, it should have been impossible for him to break into any kind of test squad given the limited experience he had. But from a selector's point of view, what I'm going to think of is what fast bowlers I might need for the Border Gavaskar Trophy. Firstly, I'll look at the kind of season they had. Secondly, I'll also look at my pool of fast bowlers from the Duleep Trophy as well as the India A squads. Apart from that, something you also want to see is that if they've been able to perform under pressure, what kind of things they bring to the table. And fourthly, do they have any kind of batting ability? I stress on this last point a bit because this is also the time when Gautam Gambhir took over the coaching, and we know his love for all-rounders. And come the BGT, you know that Jasprit Bumrah and Mohammad Siraj are both certainties in the squad. So essentially what you're looking for is a third and fourth fast bowler. Mohammad Shami was of course injured, and the likes of Prasidh Krishna, Mukesh Kumar and Akashdeep had all represented India just in the lead up to that series. And from here, if you look at this table, you'll also look at the list of fast bowlers who've done well in the recently concluded Duleep Trophy of 2024. If you remember, this happened right before that BGT, and a lot of fast bowlers performed well. We've grouped the fast bowlers on the basis of what they bring to the table, whether they're seam or swing bowlers, whether they're bowlers who can hit the deck hard, and what kind of pace they generally bowl at. Now, Anshul Kamboj, although was the highest wicket taker in that year's Duleep Trophy, you can kind of rule him out because of the lack of experience, but also because of the fact that he's just a swing bowler and bowls at limited pace. With Mukesh Kumar, given that he'd played a few test matches for India but was dropped from the squad, you might think that could be a little bit of an iffy selection, but because of the kind of performances he'd put in the Duleep Trophy, he was definitely in contention. Arshdeep and Khalil were both good options in terms of a left-arm pacer if India was looking for one, and it felt like Navdeep Saini would be one of those people who might get picked, not only for the fact that he'd got all those wickets, but also because of the fact that he was a hit-the-deck bowler and had played in Australia before. One thing to note, however, is that amongst all of these bowlers, there was only one of them who could actually do anything with the bat, and that was Harshit Rana. In the past season, he'd shown that he had the ability to score runs, and this is the only thing that could have been tipped in his favour. Shortly after, the squads for the India A team that was travelling to Australia was also announced. And unsurprisingly, it was the right set of selections where the likes of Mukesh Kumar, Navdeep Saini, Prasidh Krishna were the fast bowlers who got picked. While Khalil Ahmed also got picked, he eventually ended up getting injured right before the BGT. And in the two practice games, it was Mukesh Kumar and Prasidh Krishna who stood out. Now, logically, if you look at it and look at the progression of all of those things, Mukesh Kumar is someone who definitely should have possibly featured in that BGT tour. But not only that, even the likes of Prasidh Krishna should have made it into the squad, which he did. When the squad came out, however, is one of the reasons why Harshit Rana has been trolled a lot, because he found himself in the squad that was travelling to Australia. Not the squad that was a part of the reserves, not the touring squad, but the main Indian squad that was going to play the test matches against Australia. Surprisingly, it was the travelling reserves who were Mukesh Kumar and Navdeep Saini. And something to keep in mind is that one thing that could have gone against them was their age, because of the fact that they were 32 years of age. However, Harshit Rana going into that tour was just 22. But it was all but clear that this had to be a Gambhir pick, because there was nothing wrong that any of the other bowlers had done to not get picked into that squad that was playing the test matches. And Harshit Rana's two test matches that he ended up playing against Australia were also a great demonstration of why he was picked in the first place and why he should not have been picked. He started off with a couple of brilliant spells at Perth and also got the wicket of Travis Head. And this is where you thought that here's someone who had the ability to not only hit the deck but also ball fast and come at the batter regularly. And this is what the team management probably saw in him for picking him in that test squad. However, by the time the second test match came around, Harshit Rana was all over the place, and this showed his lack of experience in the red ball format. Of course, the one thing India got right from there is to drop him from the test squad, because clearly Harshit Rana was still a work in progress and was definitely not ready without any more practice in the Ranji format. And now the next big thing on the cards for India was the Champions Trophy in 2025. You need to remember that in the lead up to the Champions Trophy, Mohammad Siraj was struggling a bit in terms of being able to ball fast and ball consistently well. And also the fact that Bumrah broke down after the Border Gavaskar Trophy meant that there was one spot that was definitely open for a fast bowler. We also did have an England ODI and T20 series in the lead up to that Champions Trophy, and so it would make sense if India wanted to try out Harshit Rana or any other fast bowler during this period. Unsuspectingly, but a bit of a shocker really, Harshit Rana was also brought into that ODI squad that was going to play England. This was also signifying a shift in how India played the white ball format, because clearly they wanted to load their sides with all-rounders. Although up until now, Harshit Rana hadn't really done anything in the shorter formats of the game to show that he was good enough with the bat, this is one of the reasons why he was still getting picked in the white ball squads. Now, because the Champions Trophy was happening in Dubai and the kind of pitches that we have there, which are slightly on the slower side, a lot of pundits felt that it was the right decision to pick Harshit Rana. Not only because of the fact that he has extra pace and can possibly get some more out of those wickets, but also because his pace changes would be a lot more lethal. Here's a man who would generally ball in the 140 to 145 range, and he had an off-cutter that would go down to about 110 or 115 deliveries. This kind of pace change is not extremely common to see. Not only that, from a batter's point of view, especially on the pitches in Dubai, it might be a lot more difficult to counter. And this is the reason why Harshit Rana was lauded as a good selection. Not only that, Harshit also had the ability to swing and seam the ball a slight bit, which meant that a lot of things were working in his favour. Harshit ended up as the joint highest wicket taker for India in that ODI series, where in 3 matches he picked up 6 wickets. However, there were still questions on how he was an expensive bowler, because he went at an economy rate of 6.9, not something you want to see in the ODI format. But despite all of this, he was picked for the Champions Trophy squad and also ended up playing a couple of games. His returns were a lot better, because in 2 matches he picked up 4 wickets. But what was surprising was his economy rate of just 3.9. Harshit was also part of the Indian T20 squad that played the series against England. Now, although he didn't really get a game, he came in as a concussion sub for Shivam Dube. And what stood out here and why this is worth mentioning is because he clocked a delivery at 151 km per hour. Now, whether or not the speed gun was accurate is a whole other discussion, but this was one of the things that kind of stood out and why Harshit Rana might have been getting picked, because he was someone who could consistently clock those high speeds. After this comes the IPL of 2025, where he has a decent season but not one of the best. In the 13 matches that he played, he still picked up 15 wickets, but at an economy rate of 10.1. Naturally, at this point, when Harshit Rana is being picked in every squad and for every format, it was not a surprise that he was also picked for the Asia Cup. Of course, he didn't have the best returns here, and that's understandable because he's not someone who's still developed a lot in the T20 format. He played 2 games, but he had very middling returns, and in fact, he was also extremely expensive against Sri Lanka. But just when you thought that Harshit Rana might be going into a bit of a situation where he might be out of the squads, he ended up with the amazing performance that he had in the Australia series in the ODIs. At this point, it's Harshit Rana's ODI stats that are really standing out, because in the 8 matches that he's played, he's picked up 16 wickets. And for Indians after 8 ODIs, Harshit Rana already finds himself in the 3rd position in terms of the wickets taken. Now, of course, this is a very, very small sample size, and it is yet to be seen what Harshit Rana can do. However, if you look at his career up until now, you'll realize that there are a couple of things that are standing out about him and a couple of things that he needs to work on. One of the biggest criticisms of Harshit Rana has been that he's been an expensive bowler and does not have any kind of line control. What we have seen in the few spells where he's bowled well is that he's bowled good lines and he more or less can hit the right lengths and at good pace too. You need to realize that Harshit Rana is someone who's only 23 years of age at this point. And in this limited time, he's already shown signs of great improvement through just the past season of cricket that he's been able to play. Now, did he deserve to get picked in the test squad? Definitely not. Now, did he deserve to get picked in the white ball squads? That is something that is up for debate. But is he doing alright in the ODI format at least? Most definitely. There is no denying the fact that it was because of Gautam Gambhir that Harshit Rana very likely got a look in. And this is for the very simple reasons that Gautam Gambhir has seen the evolution of this player. Not only because of their roots in Delhi, but also for the time that they spent in the Kolkata Knight Riders camp. And so having that familiar player and backing him, and also the confidence that he might be able to pull off things with the bat and become a reliable option for India at number 8, means that Harshit Rana is going to get that backing. In fact, the this is no different from Shubman Gill getting the backing that he got early on in his test career, or even different from how Rohit Sharma got backing in his ODI career early on. You also need to realize the fact that India actually has very few bowlers of the likes of Harshit Rana, in the sense that he is someone who has brilliant pace changes and a large range of pace change. Not only that, he's also someone who hits the bat hard, bowls hard, hit the deck lengths, and most importantly, he's extremely young and someone that can be molded into a world-class player. Only time will tell whether or not Harshit Rana was the right player to be selected and whether or not it was right to back him through the formats that he's playing. This has been our video on Harshit Rana, and we know you're going to have a lot of things to say in the comment section. Definitely put them down and we'll try breaking down as many as we can. Thank you so much for watching. All of our links are in the description. We also have memberships now, so definitely buy one if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.